With a millennial legacy, there is no doubt that Spain was during its time one of the most transcendent powers in the history of humanity. Living proof of this is Spain or Castilian, as the native language of about 540 million people around the world. However, this amazing legacy was realized during its imperial era, whose consolidation is usually placed in 1492 with the union of the crowns of Castile and Aragon. So, how did this powerful empire that expanded across the 5 continents come to be formed? Since when can we talk about Spain as such? Are you interested in learning about the formation and imperial history of the motherland? Alright, then stay until the end of the video. Today we have the collaboration of my friend Charles from the channel History and Comments. Subscribe to his channel to find amazing history videos from all eras. I'll leave the link in the description. From prehistoric times, Spain has a lot to tell us, as it has important archaeological sites like the Cave of Tamira located in Cantabria. Here, one of the most important artistic cycles of the Paleolithic is preserved. Indeed, thanks to its geographical position at the western end of Europe, the Iberian Peninsula would have received waves of migrants from both the Mediterranean and Central Europe. Moving on to documented history, Agadir is considered the oldest settlement on the peninsula. This would have been a colony founded around the 10th century BC by the Phoenicians, a people originally from present-day Lebanon. Another civilization that explored the peninsula were the Greeks who reached the Ebro River in northeastern Spain, from which the name of the peninsula derives, as well as the native peoples who lived on it. The Iberians were peoples who shared certain common characteristics and who came to trade peacefully with the Phoenicians. Some of their branches scattered throughout the peninsula were the Sordones Laetanos, Oretanos, Astetanos y Lerguetes Castellanos, among others. It is thought that some of these tribes were matricals, with one of their most notable works being the Lady of Elche found in Alicante. Towards the end of the Bronze Age, a new people from the north, the Celts of Indo-European origin, came onto the scene and managed to expand over much of Europe, surviving today only in the British Isles. The Celts mixed with the Iberians, giving rise to the famous Celtiberians. Some tribes resulting from this amalgamation include the Aravaci Lusones, Velones, Titus Pelendones, among others. Moving to the south of the peninsula, it's important to mention the Kingdom of Tartessos, which would be considered the first organized state of Spain that extended through the current provinces of Huelva, Seville, and Cadiz. The origin of this culture is uncertain, and it is estimated that they were a pre-Indo-European people unrelated to the Iberians. The last king, as well as the only one with historical references from this state, was Arganthonios, whose death would have meant the end of the kingdom. Resuming the foreign influence, the foundation of Greek cities stands out, such as Sagunto and Emporion in present-day Valencia and Catalonia respectively. On the other hand, a Phoenician people had established themselves as a power in the Mediterranean Carthage, originating from present-day Tunisia and expanding across the southern peninsula from the 4th century BC. In the Italian peninsula, a new power was emerging, Rome, which defeated Carthage in the First Punic War. For this reason, the Carthaginians, led by Amilcar Barca, decided to expand their dominion over Iberia in search of more resources. On that journey, they founded the city of Cartagena, setting the border at the Ebro River. Given the pacifism of the Iberians, the expansion was quick and met with little resistance. Amilcar's successor and son, Hannibal, in a desire for revenge against his Roman rivals, invades the city of Sagunto, an ally of Rome. This triggered the Second Punic War, after which Rome, with the support of some Iberians, managed to defeat the Carthaginians again, expelling them from the peninsula and initiating Roman rule over Hispania. That's right, the Romans would now give it this new denomination, and its first division was that of Hispania Citerior and Ulterior. This marks the beginning of the process known as the Roman Conquest of Hispania, which lasted exactly 2 centuries. The northern peoples were the ones who showed the greatest resistance. Celtiberians Batones, Galicians Astures, Cantabrians, and above all the Lusitanians. These latter were an Indo-European people who spread from the current White Castle in Portugal to the north, and whose origin is possibly Italic or Celtic. With this people, the so-called Lusitanian Wars were unleashed, where the leadership of the remembered Viriato stands out, who despite giving Rome a headache, ends up being defeated and killed, thus allowing the Roman advance. The last to resist were the Cantabrians and Asturians to the north of the peninsula, completing the entirety of the conquest towards the 19th century BC. During this time, which coincides with the rise of the Republic to the Roman Empire, Emperor Augustus divides Hispania into 3 provinces: Baetica to the south, Lusitania to the west. Yes, that's why the term is used for the Portuguese. And Tarraconensis, the largest of the 3. Once Roman power over Hispania was consolidated, an intense process of Romanization of the territory began, which included the introduction of their religious beliefs, as well as their language, Latin, which was adapted to form the various languages that are spoken on the peninsula to this day. Since Latin was the official language, native languages such as Iberian gradually disappeared, as did their culture and identity. In their place, a new identity was created: the Hispanic Romans. In fact, the province was gaining great importance in the empire thanks to its wealth, which included agricultural resources and gold, although of course many of the native Iberians were traded as slaves. On the other hand, a landowning class with significance in Roman politics was forming. Some emperors of Hispanic origin were Trajan Hadrian or Theodosius. Towards the 3rd century AD, Hispania was again divided, now into 6 provinces, including a territory in present-day Morocco, Mauritania, Tingitana. On the other hand, they begin with the Barbarian invasions, which began to make their presence felt along all the borders of the Roman Empire. In the case of Hispania, the Gallic Empire stands out, who after invading the province of France occupied Hispania for a short period. After the legalization of Christianity by Constantine and its subsequent officialization in the empire by Theodosius, thus this religion arrives in Hispania, very important for the formation of the Spain identity. And of course, in the face of the initial dissensions of the new religion, Hispania would also have its own martyrs, one of the most remembered, the Galician Priscillian of Avila. Invasions of the peninsula occurred again in the 5th century during the decline of the Roman Empire due to civil wars. Germanic tribes such as the Swabian Vandals, as well as the Alan, formed various states on the peninsula, but the most significant invaders of this era for Spain history were the Visigoths, a Romanized Germanic people who had established a kingdom in France, present-day France, with its capital in Toulouse. This was after the official fall of Rome in 476 AD. The Visigoths were defeated by another Germanic people, the Franks, who expelled them from the current France territory after the Battle of Boulier. With this, they would move their capital to Toledo from 507, establishing a monarchy based on Arianism, a non-Trinitarian branch of Christianity that opposed the divine nature of God, suggesting that God the Son was created by God the Father. Throughout the 6th century of the kingdoms that were established in the western part of the peninsula, only the Suevi kingdom remained. To the north, a group of Basques of origin, even foreign to the Indo-Europeans, sought to stay out of the Visigothic kingdom. Likewise, the Byzantine Empire's successor to Rome in the east invades the peninsula from the south. By the 7th century, the Visigoths had managed to take power over the entire peninsula, expelling their enemies. To achieve the unity of the nation, King Ricardo had converted to Catholicism, thus promoting the fusion with the Hispano-Roman ruling classes, who also maintained their language and customs. Despite the above, internal conflicts continued throughout the century, while a new empire with a new faith expanded across the Mediterranean, the Caliphate or Maya, self-proclaimed as the successor of Muhammad to spread Islam. At the beginning of the 8th century, the invasion of the unstable Visigothic kingdom begins, finally defeating them in the Battle of Guadalete. Another reason for this rapid fall is that just for this invasion, the last king was simultaneously fighting with the Basques in the north. With the new Muslim state imposed, the successors of the Visigoths took refuge in the north, founding the Kingdom of Asturias and thus initiating the Reconquest, a period of disputes between Christians and Muslims for control of the peninsula that lasted for more than 7.5 centuries. Because of this, some consider it the longest war in history. Anyway, let's not get ahead of ourselves. The Umayyad dynasty named their new conquest as the viceroyalty of Al-Andalus, being considered a province of the Caliphate, or Maya of Damascus. However, due to conflicts between the Arab and Berber conquerors from North Africa, the Umayyads would quickly lose their power, being overthrown by the Abbasid dynasty. With this, they remain in Al-Andalus, thus founding the Emirate of Cordoba in 756. As you can imagine, during this period, a strong influence of Islamic and Arab culture begins, with the latter language considered as a cultured language. Some Hispanic Romans who converted to Islam were called muladis, while those who remained in the Christian faith were known as mozarabs. This latter term was also used to denote the Romance language that was influenced by Arabian, and to this day maintains some of the loanwords we use today. As for the expansion of Islam, which had been halted since the Battle of Poitiers, where they were defeated by the Franks, it was made impossible after the creation of the Hispanic March, established by Charlemagne in 795 as a buffer state between the Emirate and the Carolingian Empire. Likewise, the Franks also could not advance after being defeated by the Basques in the Battle of Roncesvalles Pass. Speaking of the Basques in the north, they were able to create a new Christian state, the Kingdom of Pamplona, around 824, which would join the Reconquista. The Kingdom of Asturias, for its part, becomes the Kingdom of Leon. Faced with the advance and consolidation of the Christian kingdoms in the north, the Muslims take the next step, proclaiming themselves as a caliphate in 929 during the reign of Abderrahman III. With the title of Caliph, a proclamation that occurred in the midst of the decline of the Abbasid dynasty, the Emir of Cordoba declares himself the successor of the Prophet, as well as the highest authority of Islam. In this way, the period of greatest political, cultural, and commercial splendor of Al-Andalus begins, even being able to expand a bit, occupying the north of present-day Morocco. Of course, alongside this cultural splendor of the Caliphate, the Christian kingdoms in the north are strengthening, achieving victories such as the Battle of Calatanyazor, an event of dubious veracity, but which is considered a Muslim defeat that led to the beginning of a series of confrontations between ruling Muslim families. The decline of the Caliphate had begun. In the year 1030, the Caliphate officially disintegrated into various kingdoms known as taifas. Naturally, disunity weakens you. On the other hand, the Christian states continued to advance as new kingdoms appeared, such as Castile, Aragon, and Galicia. The Reconquest was already unstoppable at this point, although on the other hand, it was held back thanks to the payment of tributes. A tribute that the Taifa kings paid to the Christian kings to avoid being attacked. Towards the end of the 11th century, the Taifas are now unified under the Almoravid dynasty, originating from North Africa. On the other hand, the Christian kingdoms continue to unify or divide in a constant game of alliances and marriages among the nobility. Faced with the failure of the Almoravids to stop the Christian advance, they are replaced by the Almohad dynasty from 1121. Within the process of reconquest, the advance of the Portuguese Count Alfonso Prim of Portugal stands out, who doubled the territory left by his predecessor. After defeating the Muslims in the Battle of Ourique in 1139, he proclaimed himself king, separating the territory from Leon and founding the Kingdom of Portugal, which, as you know, from here remains separate from the unification of the Spain kingdoms. No matter how much the Muslims received Berber reinforcements from the north of... The next milestone would be the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa, in which the Christian coalition achieves a decisive victory against the Almohads. This is considered the beginning of the decline of this dynasty, which also saw the rise of new Muslim states in North Africa. In 1230, Castile is unified with Leon, marking the beginning of the Crown of Castile. The Crown of Aragon, on the other hand, had unified with the Catalan counties and annexed the Balearic Islands. Navarre, formerly Pamplona, kept its territory almost stable. The Almohads were finally expelled by 1238, being succeeded by the Kingdom of Granada under the command of a new dynasty, the Nasrid. During the 14th century, the crowns of Castile and Aragon continued their expansion. While Castile was devising Atlantic expansion, competing maritime with Portugal, Aragon ventures into the islands of Sardinia and Sicily. However, both crowns, especially Aragon, were greatly affected after the Black Plague of 1347, with Barcelona being one of the main focuses of the pandemic. After this instability, a civil war breaks out in Castile, which was framed within the context of the 100 Years' War between France and England. This ends with the victory of Henry of Trastamara, with the support of France establishing this house in the Crown of Castile, who continues to provide their support to the France in this war. During the 15th century, the expansion continues. Norman vassals of Castile annex the Canary Islands, while Aragon consolidates the conquest of the Kingdom of Naples. Despite this expansion, Aragon was again facing internal problems, especially during the reign of John II. As in some territories of the Crown, local constitutions prevailed over the royal will. Such was the case of the County of Barcelona, where Catalan institutions rebelled against royal authority, leading to the Catalan Civil War, in which John II of Aragon managed to suppress his adversaries. However, a historic marriage would change the landscape of Aragon. The union between the heir to the throne, Ferdinand of Aragon, and Isabella, the Catholic Princess of Castile. Yes, the era of the Catholic monarchs begins. This would attract international attention, as upon the death of the Castilian monarch in 1474, the question of succession arises between the aforementioned Isabella, married to Ferdinand of Aragon, and the daughter of Henry, Juana la Beltraneja, married to the King of Portugal. This triggers a war of succession between the Isabelinos and Juanistas, supported by the crowns of both husbands. After the victory of the Isabelinos, the dynastic union between Castile and Aragon is recognized, who in turn renounce the throne of Portugal, distancing it even further from the kingdoms. The next step towards the consolidation of Spain would be the War of Granada, in which both crowns defeat the last Muslim stronghold on the peninsula, the Kingdom of Granada, annexing the territory to the Crown of Castile in 1492. And this historic year for Spain coincides with the hiring of Christopher Columbus for the expedition that would lead to the discovery of America. With the annexation of Navarre around 1510 and the subsequent conquest of various territories in America, the Spain Imperial era begins. An unprecedented era where this glorious empire leaves a legacy that is still felt today in every corner of the world. Of course, the debate still exists today as to when Spain actually began as such. And what do you think? When do you think such an argument should be considered? With the marriage of the Catholic monarchs, or perhaps with the rise of the House of Asurgo? Don't forget to leave your comment, and if you like this video, support me with a like and subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me on my social networks, and if you're interested in supporting this project, any donation on Patreon is welcome. See you next time!